Hello, listeners. Happy Halloween week. What a coincidental week it is. We have received a story from a distant place where Halloween night holds terrors hidden behind a little girl in a paper mache mask. Not to worry though. Like I said, she is far, far from us. Now, before we begin, I do want to say that there will be a fan-based episode releasing this week, right before Halloween. So keep your ears open and the notifications on so you can join in on the fun. And if you want to always be in on the action, you can go to our Patreon, become an interdimensional traveler. You will receive bonus episodes, ad-free listening, and access to our chat. But enough of this. Strap in tight. Trials are about to begin.
Hello, listeners. My name is Professor Abdontes Finch, and welcome to the Nightmare Trials.
Alright, shut up. Everyone shut up. I have a story to tell you.
Oh, Donovan, we don't want to hear another one of your lame-ass horror stories.
Yeah, fuck you, Trina. This one's different.
Oh, really? How?
Because this story is real. My cousin told it to me last week.
Right.
Enough, Beth. Just listen. We aren't doing anything else out here other than sitting around this fire. And I'm tired of watching you and Landon feel each other up all night.
Bro, chill. I don't need your negativity right now. It isn't my fault your smug ass can't pull a date for tonight.
I ain't the only one. Trina didn't bring anyone either.
Yeah, well, she's different than you. She doesn't bitch about it all the time. She just lives her life. You should really follow suit, man.
Whatever, man. You know, you changed since you started dating her. You two are always off doing your own thing. It's like I don't even exist anymore or something.
Oh, get over yourself. You'll find someone and the same shit will happen to you. Just stop being a baby. You're ruining our Halloween fun.
Whatever. I ain't changing for no one. I like me just the way I am.
Enough, you two. Go on, Edgar Allan Poe. Proceed with your real-life horror story. But if we aren't scared by the end of it, I'm personally going to kick you in the head and steal all your candy.
Whatever. You ruined the mood.
No. You have us all listening. You can't back out now. Start with your story.
Okay, here we go. It was Halloween night, and my cousin and a few of his friends were out pulling pranks on the kids in the neighborhood. There were 4 of them in their group, and they were all dressed up like your prototypical horror villains. You know, like the ones you see on TV. Freddy, Jason, Ghostface, and Michael Myers. Nothing too scary, but enough that some little kids would get spooked and run away. So they would scope out the areas that were really dark and hide behind some bushes or just in the shadows. When some kids were walking through the area, one of them would emerge from the shadows and just stand there, staring at them, all ominous looking and shit. My cousin said every time that person would walk out, the kids would freeze in place. But some would run away at the sight of them, but most just stood there, frozen in fear. It was those kids that were the best to scare. The others in his group would circle around and come up on those kids from behind, and then jump out at them. He said their screams would echo through the streets, and the candy they dropped when they ran was plentiful. They would hit a spot like this until some grown-ups would shoo them off, threatening to call the cops and shit like that. Then they would find a new place and just rinse and repeat.
Does this story get any better?
Shut up, man. I'm getting to that part. Now, as they were winding down for the night, splitting up the candy they had just collected, a cold chill swept through the air. followed by this really thick and dense fog. My cousin's boy Randy started to freak out, saying it wasn't natural. Like, fog just doesn't roll in like that. But they called him a wimp and told him to chill the hell out. Pork Pie and Biggs even began to make ghost noises at him, just to rile him up even more. Randy tried to laugh it off, but he was feeling uneasy about it all. My cousin said he was feeling weird about it too, like the mist itself was getting really thick now. He couldn't even see more than 50 feet in front of him. But he wasn't going to bring this creeping fear to anyone's attention. He was like the ringleader of the group, you know? He had appearances to upkeep. So he joined in on the jabs at Randy, calling him a pansy and poking fun at him. They went at him for a while, and Randy was getting pissed, like about to leave without any of the candy pissed, and that's when they heard it. A disembodied laugh from what they could only assume was a small girl.
Wow, I didn't know you even knew the word disembodied, Donovan. You surprise me every day.
Are you going to interrupt me every few seconds? Or can I get on with a damn story? Good. So anyways, they heard this disembodied laugh of a small girl. Thinking it was one of the kids they pranked earlier, my cousin stood up and shouted at them. Hey, little punk, don't even think about trying to get your candy back. We did the tricks tonight, and you provided the treats, so go on and fuck off with yourself. That is when another laugh echoed back to them in response. It seemed closer this time, though. Like the girl herself was just outside of their eyeshot, hiding within the fog. Biggs and Pork Pie even started to get that look of fear in their face. Like something was really off, you know? Another laugh echoed past them, and the streetlights flickered for a few seconds. It was at this time that Randy had had enough and said he was getting the hell out of there. He kept on saying that this was some next level ghostly shit, and he wasn't going to play around with it. So the dude jetted off into the night, taking Biggs and Pork Pie with him. But my cousin stayed. He wasn't going to punk out, even if he was scared. Plus, him staying like that just gave him more power and clout over these others. He could ride this Halloween night well into graduation. But he told me he was kind of scared. He listened closely to the group's footsteps echo off in the distance, and he counted the seconds down from 30. He had to stay there long enough to let the boys get further away, and when he reached 0, he would pick up the spoils of the night and just casually stroll on home like nothing ever happened. He'd gotten to 20 seconds left when he noticed their voices and footsteps could no longer be heard, and he stood up and turned to gather the candy bags. 19. He heard the crunch of some leaves behind him. He turned towards the fog and stared out into nothing. 18. 17. 16. 15. Another laugh, this time to the right of him in the direction that the boys had run off in. He turned his gaze in that direction, but nothing was there. 14. 13. 12. The streetlights began to flicker around him again. 11. 10. 9. Another laugh and the sound of padded footsteps approaching. 8. 7. 6. 5. The fog began to move in closer and closer to him. The streetlights began to flicker more and more. He wasn't going to stick around any longer. Fuck the bags, fuck the clout, fuck this night. He was going to get gone and in a goddamn hurry. 4, 3, 2, 1. The lights went out. The wisping fog swirled around his face, only being illuminated by the moonlight above. His field of vision was now reduced to mere feet in front of him. His legs began to shake and he cursed at himself for his inability to run. A streetlight flickered on in front of him, and within its light stood a figure. A small girl with long, black pigtails. She wore a tattered and stained sheet as a dress, and on her head was an oversized papier-mâché pumpkin. He said the colors looked faded, and dark pulsating veins crept up and around the makeshift mask. In its mouth, it looked like human teeth had been placed in, but not in any order that made sense, and there were far too many within the mouth itself. In her hand, she held a large kitchen knife, and it appeared that blood was dripping from it. My cousin had seen enough at this point. He was ready to bolt on out of there as fast as he could, and that is when she began to raise her other hand. You see, it was hidden by the fog that moved around her. As she raised her hand, she began to laugh more and more. It felt like an attack on his senses. He was starting to freak the fuck out, but his body wouldn't let him move until he saw what this psycho kid was trying to show him. And he wished he'd never seen it. There, all lit up in the streetlight and in clear view, she held up Pork Pie's head. She had him by the hair, and his head now turned towards my cousin. His mouth hung slack, and his final look of fear stared back at him. Then, in a movement that was almost too fast to perceive, she dug the knife into his eye and began to carve away, creating triangular caverns in his skull, and that is what did it for my cousin. He fucking ran as fast as he could away from that demon child. He ran and ran, not even knowing where he was going. All the while, he could hear the girl's laugh getting faint behind him. He saw car headlights in the distance, and he flagged the vehicle down, telling them what he just saw. Then roughly 15 minutes later, the police had arrived at the location, and after a day of searching, they found Pork Pie's body. It was up in one of the trees in the cemetery, some 15 miles away from where my cousin reported seeing the kid. How it got there, the police weren't too sure, nor were the other boys that ran off that night. They said they were running through the fog as fast as they could. They said it felt like something was chasing them, something predatory. It wasn't until the fog had cleared that they noticed Pork Pie wasn't with them anymore. They thought that he maybe just split off from them and headed on home. He would do that sometimes, so they didn't think much more of it. They were all questioned, and ultimately, they were ruled out as suspects in the murder. Then the details of Pork Pie's body were leaked to the public. The police had said they found him in the tree, but they never really said how they found him. But I guess he had been dismembered and had his insides all taken out. Bits of them were strewn across old trees, almost like whomever did it was trying to decorate the tree up or something. But the odd thing that none of them could really make sense of was that his head was never found. Every other part of him was accounted for. Even the animals didn't touch him. Almost like his remains were cursed, but his head, the one my cousin saw getting sawed up like a fucking jack-o'-lantern, that thing was just gone. And that's it. That's the story. So Trina, was that better than my other ones? Yo, you good? Shit, I guess that story did get you. It scared me too when you told me. Like, I knew Pork Pie had died, but I didn't understand why my cousin was making it so damn gruesome.
This girl that your cousin saw, did she say anything to him?
I don't know. He didn't really tell me much more about it. It's all a story anyways. But why do you ask?
Because he isn't lying about the story. The girl is real.
Shut up. You're just playing into this, trying to make fun of me or something.
I'm not, Donovan. The girl is fucking real. I have seen her.
Bullshit. You're fucking with me. You know what? If she's so real, why don't you tell me your story about her?
I really don't want to.
Ah, come on. Maybe you don't want to because you don't have a story to tell.
Fuck you, Donovan. I don't have to prove shit to you.
Trina, you don't have to prove anything to this asswipe. But I do want to hear your story.
Okay. I'll tell the damn story. It was Halloween night about 10 years ago, just before I'd moved here with my mom. At Seddon, Halloween had always seemed like so much fun. I got to dress up, and for the past 4 years, I had chosen to be a princess. So this year wasn't going to be any different. I was really into Frozen at the time, so I went that year as Elsa, and my parents went as Anna and spin. In my memories, it was so cute and so much fun. The night was filled with cheap scares and even cheaper candy. But none of that mattered to me. We were together and just having fun. The memories were being made, and I couldn't ask for anything else. We were coming towards the end of our night. My favorite part. That is when we would go to Halloween Lane, which was the rich neighborhood in my town. It was dubbed this Halloween Lane because every house would be decked out. Large animatronic werewolves, zombies crawling out of the ground, and full-size candy bars. Everything was going so well until I saw her. We were 3 houses in when I noticed an animatronic that looked different. It was a small girl in a soiled cheek. And on her head was a papier-mâché pumpkin with black veins crawling around it. And just like you said, Donovan, her mouth was filled with too many human-like teeth, all scattered and all mismatched. I had stopped and looked at her, letting my parents walk ahead of me. She cocked her head to the side and gave me a little finger wave. And then I heard that laugh. I had screamed and ran to catch up with my parents, my father asking me what was going on. I told him about the girl animatronic and he just brushed it off. Even if he believed me, I don't think it would have changed anything though. We finished up trick-or-treating on Halloween Lane, and by that time I had already forgotten about the pumpkin girl. I was focusing on eating the king-sized Milky Way I had just received. My parents were walking just in front of me, holding hands and talking about the night we had just had. Then laughter echoed behind us, and I stopped. I turned around to see her standing just mere feet in front of me, her head still leaning to the side. And in her hand was a large kitchen knife, and she raised it high above her head. I dropped all my candy and bite-eyed a scream. She responded with another laugh. The knife came plunging down at me as I closed my eyes waiting for the impact. But it never came. I heard my father next to me yelling at the child, asking them what the hell they thought they were doing. He had caught her by the wrist and stopped the knife from plunging into me, but I think he had thought it was some sick joke, like the knife wasn't real because he didn't do anything to get it away from her. She turned her gaze towards him now, and in one swift, unnatural motion, her small hand shot up and grabbed his wrist. My father's eyes widened in shock as the sounds of bones snapping beneath her fingers assailed my ears. He screamed, trying to pull his hand back, but she didn't let go. Instead, she tightened her hold, her head tilting further to the side, and with one violent jerk, she twisted my father's arm until it tore from his body. Blood sprayed across the asphalt and across my face, and down the side of the spin costume. The girl laughed again. Somehow my father managed to yell to my mother and I to run. I felt hands grip me away. I was lifted in the air and was retreating in the opposite direction with my mother. She was screaming wildly for anyone to help, and I was screaming for my father to run with us. But I don't think he could, even if he wanted to. He had fallen to his knees now, blood still pumping and gushing from his wound. He was eye to eye with the girl in the pumpkin mask, and I watched as her mouth widened like a snake's mouth, preparing for its meal. Her free hand reached out, gripping my father by the throat, and tilted him forward, placing his head into her now unhinged jaw. Then she clamped down hard. I will never forget that sound of bone, muscle, and tissue breaking and tearing. And I will never forget that sight of my father's headless body being held up by the throat by the girl in the pumpkin mask. We had filed a police report that night, but nothing ever came of it. My father's body was never found. Then the rumor started around us. People were saying that my mother had something to do with my father's disappearance. People speculated that she had killed him that night, buried his body in the backyard, or burned him in one of our burn barrels. I was getting made fun of at school, too. I would have drawings of a pumpkin head girl on my locker, Kids would tease me, telling me my mother was a murderer. I would protest and let them know what actually happened. They called me crazy. And that is when we decided to move.
Oh, bullshit. You told us your dad was killed during active duty. You made up that story to one-up mine. God, you're always doing this.
It's true, Donovan. My mother and I made up the active duty story so no one would go digging into what really happened to my father. We moved here to get away from the rumors and all the bullshit, not just to have it all start up again.
Donovan, you're such a dick. I mean, look at her. She is clearly upset. Trina, hey. I just want you to know that I believe you.
Yeah?
Yeah, I do. But I have to know something. You'd ask Donovan if the girl said anything to his cousin. Did she say something to you?
She did. It was when I first saw her hidden within the animatronics. Before she laughed, and before I ran away screaming for my parents.
And what did she say?
She said that I was hers, no matter where I went. And that she would always find me.
Yo, what the fuck was that?
Donovan, chill the fuck out. It's probably a deer or something.
Nah, man, deer don't get this close to people. Landon, why don't you get your hand off her ass and pick up that rock over there? There is something out there, man, and we're gonna have to defend ourselves.
Dude, stop trying to scare us. It's probably just an animal.
I watched as a knife plunged deep into the top of Lyman's head. I watched as Beth jumped up and away from him. Lyman's body began to twitch, and he was mumbling complete nonsense. I saw Donovan looking around for me, and I watched as the realization hit his face that I was no longer there. I slowly emerged from behind Landon. The campfire we made illuminated my face in an orange glow. In my arms was a papier-mâché pumpkin mask. The same mask I had been wearing for countless years. The bodies I possessed were different, but the mask, that never changed. It was my gateway into this realm. And with it, I was able to play. And play, I did.
Thank you for listening and supporting this podcast. If you would like access to the interdimensional radio station, you can search for the Nightmare Trials on Patreon. Once there, it is only $2 per month to gain access to our extra short stories and chat discussion with the professor. Your contribution helps us continue to do what we do. Further, you can go to the nightmaretrials.square.site and order merch and suggest to be a part of one of our stories. We would love nothing more than to add your name to our writings. Lastly, make sure to follow the podcast and hit the notification button so you never miss an episode. Until we meet again,